Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing a pretty quick tutorial just on the difference between padding and margins when using them within the context of HTML and CSS. So for your Neocities site or really any type of website builder. So just to jump right in, I've created a Neocities site to kind of demonstrate these concepts, and all I have is a red square and a blue square, and then I've implemented them in HTML, and this is like with minimal editing, like this is the standard how they show up on the screen. So starting first with padding, a quick note, I will leave a link in the description to this Google Doc where I kind of just dumped all of the information I could come up with about padding and margins, but I will also leave a link in the description to this really awesome site that is a bit more professionally written, and if you're having trouble understanding the way I'm explaining it, I think it is worth a good read through, and it even has pictures and examples, which I know can be really helpful. Anyways, starting with padding, padding is used for space within an element's border, and margins is used for space outside of an element's border. So that's the main difference between the two. So padding is useful to push items inward, like further inside of a parent element or a container. For example, I will just demonstrate this with some text. So we're just going to say hello. And you can see that it is kind of pushed up right against the border, and maybe we don't want it to, be so close to the border, so we want to push it inwards. So with that, we could say padding 20 px. For example, I'm just choosing a random number, any number works. You can see that it is now not pushed up against the border. However, when you increase padding, you are increasing the space inside of the container. And as you can see, I have a set width and height that will also increase the overall size of the container by 20 px. So 20 px to the width and 20 px to the height. You can see that even though they are both set at 100 px for the width and the height, the red box is now bigger than the blue box. This does not happen when using margins. However, if you do not want padding to have this effect, you are simply going to add the line box sizing border box, and what this does is it takes away any extra width and height padding adds or borders add. So you can see, oh, I did not use a semicolon. So you can see that now actually the red container is slightly smaller than the blue container, even though again they both have the same size, but that is because border, since it is a 5 px border, it is adding 5 extra px to the overall width and height of the box. And so what box sizing border box does is it not only takes away the extra space padding adds, but also the extra space that border adds, which hence why the red box is now 5 px smaller than the blue box, which does not have box sizing border box applied. Similarly, a padding value cannot be negative and also cannot be simply set to the word auto. Margins, however, can be negative and can be set to the word auto. We will go over this in a second. So switching to margins, like I said, that is going to be space outside of an element's border. So this is really useful for separating elements to prevent a layout from looking super cluttered. So you can see how the standard is the blue box is touching the red box. And if I wanted to change that, I would simply add, we could say margin top 20 px. So that is going to push some space in between the two boxes here. Like I said, you can make a margin negative if you want to overlap elements. So if you do want your layout to look cluttered, which I think sometimes can look super cool, you are able to use a negative margin value. So here I'm saying negative 20 px. So this is going to push the red container on to the blue container here. And you can also set a margin to auto, which will horizontally center the element in the middle of your page, I guess. So for example, if I said margin auto for the red container, this would put the red container in the middle of the page. Now keep in mind, this only centers it horizontally. You can see it. If it was like perfectly in the center of my page, it would be in the middle here, but that is what you can do. And another really cool note, if you have something inside of a container and you want a really quick way to, again, center it horizontally, you can say margin 0 auto. I will demonstrate this really quickly. It is important to note that the element must have a fixed width, so it must have a set width, and it also must be a block element. You don't really need to know what this means, but just know that, for example, I'm going to be adding an image using IMG SRC. In a second, I will show you that, and that is not a block element, so I will simply just need to add display block for it to work. And then what 0 is doing is it's centering, it's the top and bottom values, and then auto is for the left and right values. So I'm just going to quickly remove the margins and the padding and all of that, as well as the text. And I'm just going to add an image, like I said, using image SRC. So this is just a random image I recently saved to my Pinterest. And so we are going to say display block, and then we're going to say margin 0 auto, and then I am just going to set a width for the image because it's going to be really big if I don't do that. And then we can see that we now have the image and it is centered horizontally. And like, let's say we wanted to center it vertically, we could simply do margin. We could add some more margins. We could say margin top 50px. Or I guess that's too much, so let's say 25px. And it is now in the center of our container. So I think that that's super cool. You could also literally just, instead of saying margin 0 auto, you could say margin left 25px, and then that would do the same thing. It's just like little shortcuts, just tips, I guess, things to keep in mind. And I did want to mention you can do the reverse of this, so you can center it vertically but not horizontally. So this would be the opposite of margin auto or 0 auto. You would do margin auto 0, which is, like I said, the reverse. So auto is the top and bottom values, and now 0 is for the left and right values. But if you do this, you do have to make the parent container display flex. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but it's just something you have to do. So now you can see that the it's centered vertically but not horizontally. And again, if you wanted it to be centered in both ways, you would simply remove the 0 and just say auto. And now it is perfectly in the center. I just had to say margin auto, display flex. The last thing I want to mention is there's lots of different ways to write padding and margins, and a lot of them mean the same thing. So like I was showing earlier, you can set simply one of the 4 values from top, bottom, left, right. You can say padding top, padding bottom, padding left, padding right, the same thing with margins. Or you could just say padding 10px, which means all 4 sides are 10px. And that padding 10px would be equivalent to all of these values being set to 10px. It is just the difference of 4 lines of code versus 1 line of code. And this is something that confuses me a little bit. So I think it's helpful to have a note of it. The order when you are, again, using these would be equivalent to doing something like this. It's just how many lines of code do you want to have to write. So when you are having, like, let's say instead of 4 values, you just want to edit 2 of them or 3 of them or 4 of them, but you want them all to be different. It's going to go top, right, bottom, left, kind of. I guess it's easy to remember because it's in clockwise order. So like, for example, if I wanted 3 values, so padding 5px, 10px, 15px means that the top is 5px, the right is 10px, and the bottom is 15px, and then the left, since it's not set, would just be set to 0px. So you can do that, but this would also be equivalent to saying padding top 5px, padding right 10px, padding bottom 15px, and then not setting a value for padding left. I hope that that makes sense. Like I said, this will be linked in the description if you want to refer back to it. It took me, I'd have to, mess around with the numbers before I finally got the hang of it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for margins and padding. Like I said, a very, very quick tutorial. Hopefully something that's pretty easy to understand. Again, if you don't like how I explain it, I'll leave this helpful resource in the description. Really quickly, I guess the most important thing to remember is padding is within a container's border and then margins is outside of a container's border. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Shout out to the person who requested this tutorial. I am always looking for video ideas, so please feel free to leave those down below. All of my socials as well are linked in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for the recent support. I really appreciate it. I love making these videos. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I will see you all in the next video.